Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you from wherever and whenever you're listening. My name is Nathan Herrman, and I'm joined by my lovely co hosts, Crystal Golightly and Steven Dickens, as always. And you are listening to another episode of AR Chat. Today is a fun episode because we are joined by one of my first bosses in the world of analyst relations, one of the people to help rescue me from the world of teaching, and that is John Rockhold from Spotlight Analyst
I
Relations.
didn't
Hi,
know
John.
John managed you. Is there a counselling course for that, John? Like, have you sort of managed to come out the other side?
I just bask in the success that Nathan has had since, accomplishing new things.
All right, wrap it up. That's the end. That's the end of the podcast.
No,
So,
let's go
John,
there for at least 5
Real
minutes.
guys, bye.
John, I'm going to tee you up to introduce yourself because I think this is fascinating. So I know this, maybe not a lot of people know this. You came to the world of analyst relations from the world of journalism, right? And so you want to talk a little bit about your background and how you got into AR, how you started at Spotlight, and what you're doing today.
Yep. Thank you all. Thrilled to be here. My story for AR, for Spotlight, actually traces back to my very first job out of college. So in college, I had the delusion of being a writer and making a living as a writer. But I also knew that, being a starving writer did not appeal to me. I needed a steady paycheck. I wanted a steady paycheck. So I discovered journalism, magazine journalism specifically. I'm old enough. Yes, magazines were a major thing. And I discovered that in B2B media, you could be a staff writer and you could have a steady paycheck to write. And I landed an internship at a magazine called Wireless Review. It was a cell phone technology magazine. This is before the era of the iPhone, but things like mobile commerce and mobile web were starting to emerge. And that internship turned into a job. And I began to read IDC, Gartner, Ovum, Yankee Group, and talk to those analysts and read their research and quote from their data. And that's where I first was exposed to the insights, the power, the authority, the compelling perspective of industry analysts. September 11th happened. The economy crashed. We all lost our jobs. I spent several months freelancing, landed on my feet at a consumer magazine, spent 10 years there, had an awesome tenure. But then this longtime friend of mine, Andrew Shue, called me. And I knew he had started something. And when he described it to me, I had to be one of the few people, I'm guessing, I was one of the few people who understood the concept. And to make a long story less long, he asked me about joining Spotlight, and I was floored. And he pitched the idea of starting a team, a division, the analyst desk of Spotlight. And we talked about it. I met Rick, and I grilled them with questions, and I just couldn't say no. And so the concept at first was build understanding of analysts, who they are, what makes them tick, what makes analyst X different than analyst Y in coverage, in preferences and personalities, and drive our analyst-centric analyst relations approach. And that was awesome. And I've built amazing relationships, dare I even say friendships, with lots of analysts. Spotlight's evolved quite a bit. My role's evolved quite a bit. But September 2012, I started. And here we are. It's been an amazing ride.
Okay, let me hop in here because I know everyone's probably like, Crystal and John in the same show.
Yeah.
Well, you know what else is really neat is you started in September 2012. I started in September 2011. So there's a lot of kind of ironic parallels there. I also thought we were closer in age. Can I say this? Because I was in college when 9/11 happened. That's actually surprising to me. So I think that
I was just a bit out, not
there.
much.
There's a compliment in there before the internet roasts me. That's really interesting. I really like that story. It's interesting how we all get here, right?
I didn't realize you were a journalist for so long, John.
Yeah.
That's a bit, I mean, I kind of knew you were, but I didn't know it was like that length of period of time.
Well,
yeah,
and
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
That's legit. I mean,
12 years-ish. Yeah. And I understood the concept right away. I've been on the receiving end of bad PR. I read research from analysts. I understood right away that analyst relations should be different than public relations.
mm-hmm.
And I, of course,
The amount of people who still haven't realized that, John, is
it's
kind of interesting, but
stunning.
we digress. Yeah.
yeah, that's a rabbit hole.
Well,
Yeah,
Liz
for sure.
Miller, the episode that we just published, that actually got a lot of like AR love across the board. When she had said, I think that was a mic drop moment, like AR is not fancy PR.
Not fancy
No,
for you.
it's a different profession entirely. John, I also think it's interesting. Your background kind of identifies something I've always been super fascinated by, which is the fact that I think nobody goes to college wanting to do AR. Like maybe they could, maybe we could go do guest lectures at KU or another college. But it's the diverse range of skill sets, but also the commonality of being a lifelong learner and being fascinated by new information technology. I think that's part of the foundation of what makes a really successful AR professional, whether it's in-house AR, working for a company like Spotlight or AR Insights. It's just fascinating. It's worth calling out.
Yeah. Well, and I think similarly, nobody goes to college thinking I want to be an industry analyst.
100%.
So,
100%.
you need to learn a variety of things. In my case, it was research, writing, relationship building, connecting dots, and empathy, and all of those things paid off when I began to build the analyst desk at Spotlight.
You
I mean,
just highlighted the
what-
most critical skill, which is empathy in any
Yeah.
profession. I just want to stand on the soapbox for a minute there. Go ahead, Steven. I was also going to ask you, how did you get into being an analyst? Because I think that would be a really good parallel.
Yeah,
with this.
yeah. So yeah, came out of college, got straight into enterprise sales with a bunch of guys in their 40s and 50s. So swimming with the sharks straight away. Wild time in the industry, particularly kind of the mainframe space back then. The CEO and co-CEO and CTO of that company all ended up doing time. One of them 14 years for white collar crime. So it was a wild time, lots of stories. So as a 22, 23-year-old kid, I got thrown in the deep end, then ended up working for a reseller, Computer Center, biggest reseller in Europe, then ended up going to HP, did sort of 10 years there, then did IBM. And through that, got to know a guy called Daniel Newman back in 2017.
Never heard of him. Never heard.
So 2017, I was kind of blogging and really active on social media. Ran my own blog and was getting sort of 4,000 or 5,000 views a month, kind of writing about mainframes. So kind of was doing the job, or parts of the job of being an analyst without really knowing. I used to get my IDC briefing once a quarter on market share stats, but that was about it. And then, so Daniel and I built a relationship, got him into IBM, did work for IBM, so kind of broke him into IBM. And then about 2019, he said, you'd be good at this. You should think about coming over. And I'm like, yeah, things are going on. So wind forward to May 21, opportunity to leave IBM, took Daniel up on his offer of joining Futurum, employee number 4 at Futurum, which kind of crazy to say now, considering how big and sprawling they are. But like the
Through
company,
their early days.
yeah. Ron was number 3, so he was like the first employee after Daniel and Shelley, and then it was me. Wild ride, 9 acquisitions, like hyper growth.
That's where I met you, working for Spotlight.
Yeah.
We wanted to better understand Futurum, and you were our point of contact.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
kind of ended up just diving in and had a coverage area which was in the mainframe space, but was doing business development as well. And that dial kind of moved over time to doing more analysts to drop the sales side and then started Hyperframe.
So I want to latch on to something you said and direct it to John and Crystal, because I think you both have interesting insights. You talked about kind of the specific genesis to being an analyst. You had a blog, you were getting 4,000 or 5,000 views a month, you were writing about mainframes. This is back, I think you said 2011, 2012, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
The mid-aughts? Okay. Today, jump forward to today, we have the rise of Substack and we have the rise of Medium and all these other blogging sites. And it almost seems like the world of journalism / analysis is starting to democratize again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's expanding how we look at influence, how we look at analysts. So John, would love to hear your take on that trend. And then obviously, Crystal, you as well, because you guys are also tracking kind of that evolution.
Storytelling is hot, and as it should be. And these trends don't have to be black and white. Generative AI can be a fantastic tool for writers, for editors, for researchers, for analysts. It doesn't have to take away the humanity, the storytelling, the talent, the journalism, the voice of those people. It can amplify, it can assist, it can accelerate. I think we've all seen the headlines on LinkedIn about companies hiring for storytellers. I mean, that's awesome. That's fantastic. So yeah, I think that authenticity will matter more and more. Trust will matter more and more moving forward. I mean, we're just eyeballs deep in information, right? And that has its pros and cons. But being able to trust an authentic expert human via Substack, Medium, LinkedIn, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, whatever, that is going to persist.
I mean, it's in journalism, it's the citizen journalism kind of trend. I wonder whether there's kind of a citizen analyst kind of trend of, and that can even be people who work for big firms. I think it doesn't mean that you have to go and start your own Substack. I think, I pick Ali Mellon at Forrester. She kind of embodies this kind of authentic person at big firm. Ali is uniquely Ali. She is whipcrap smart. She's seen as a leader. She'll be SVP of Forrester at some point if they have any sense. But she's Ali in a big organization, and she's not she's almost, her brand is on the same level as Forrester's for what she does in her coverage area. And that's unusual for the big firms. It's maybe more so for the boutiques and independents. But I think it's a trend we're going to see more and more, that these analysts kind of have their own masthead almost, if that makes sense.
I think that's been true across the firms for a while. I do think you're getting more visibility into who those individual personas are. But if you look at Gartner, you look at cybersecurity, like people know Andrew Lerner, for example, right? People know Neil McDonald. IDC, we've had Matt Eastwood on the show. People know Matt.
Matt's living and breathing.
The example I always come back to in terms of the culmination of these trends is Francis Odom. We give him a ton of free publicity on this show, but he started his own. He is awesome, and he started with a Substack, just writing about cybersecurity, and now he's actually launched a firm, and he has a few people on staff.
A few? Did you see their SKO or their offsite?
No, I didn't.
A dozen or something.
Right. Francis is on fire, man. He's like doing all the things.
Whole machine started. Yeah.
So, Crystal, you've been quiet. What do you think about all this? Where do you want to take us?
Gosh, I literally had like 3 conversations in my head between everything you were saying. But I think what I want to point on, and we've talked about this, when John and I started, it was the era of the rockstar analyst. This is when you started seeing like people really doing what Steven is saying. It's like having a personality. They have deep knowledge, but they're also very sizzle reel and marketable. And they had a platform, and that was Twitter. And they had these hot takes, and they were like rapid firing, or they were using some type of blog, whatever. And I think we're in another cycle of that, but I think it's a little different. And I think it's because of AI and because of the need to probably reduce costs and make everything is at scale, right? So we're starting to see, like, with the larger firms bringing in like analysts that will do things in the corporate way, in the model, which I guess there's value in that. And certainly there's some value in that, but it's back to the storytelling and the empathy and the value of having been in the trenches. And honestly, like, someone that has been burned 50 different ways because they've been in the trenches is going to give you really good insight.
Yeah.
So how do you manufacture that? And so back to my original thing, the rockstar analyst, that's kind of what's going on. The analyst that has been there, done that, and can identify the cyclical patterns of things because they've lived 20 years or 15 years or 10 years through whatever ideation and fires and, oh my God, why did we do that? They're going to be able to provide you a lot more value, and they're probably not going to fit into that mold. We're in another cycle of that right now. The impetus is probably AI and, all the things going on. So yeah, it definitely feels like we're in this cycle.
Mm-hmm. It goes back to our earlier conversation about, nobody is in college thinking, I want to become a rock star industry analyst. Do we agree that one must have a certain amount of experience and insight and perspective before you can become a reputable rock star analyst?
I mean, you look at Francis. I don't know how old Francis is. I mean, I certainly don't want to guess how old Ali is, because that'll probably get me in trouble and cancelled, so I'm not going to do that. But, I mean, I think So there's two schools of thought in my head on this. I think, and there's some grey in my beard, and I'd put myself in the camp of I've got a bunch of experience and seen a bunch of patterns and just got a body of experience. But I think you can be so I think there's that camp of analysts. I'm thinking, some of the guys in the database space, they've been just around forever. They know their stuff. They've seen it all before. Carl Olofsson and, the Tony Beers of this world. Those guys are like rock stars, been around in the database space. And it's just you are buying into their experience and knowledge and kind of tribal elder kind of almost. But then I
Those
look at
are so important.
yeah. I mean, 100%. But then I look at people like Francis. I look at somebody like Katie Norton. I look at somebody like
At Gartner, somebody like Autumn Stanish.
yeah. Look at there's a couple of people at IDC that I put into this category. And we talked about Ali. These guys are like 4 or 5 year professionals in an industry analysts. They're sort of late 30s, early 40s. Francis probably younger than that even still. And they're rock star in it. So I think we can overly rotate onto age and experience, but I think it's just intellectual curiosity. If you've got some hustle in your brain, you can pick.
To be fair, I think I've kind of always looked at it in that analysts come from one of two camps: deep practitioner background or deep academic background. I feel like those are two overgeneralizations, right? You either lived the technology for a period of time, you were wiring the mainframe, you were, putting in the bolts for the rack, or you had something in your background, journalism in John's case, Wall Street in Crystal's case, teaching in my case. Again, this is AR, but also, something that lends to deep research, critical thinking, analysis. Now, what I'm curious, John, is, people will not be oblivious to this fact. Spotlight's been kind of making a claim towards influence orchestration. You announced an acquisition yesterday. How do you kind of, as what I would say one of the thought leaders, perceive as the future, the change in this direction? It's not just about analysts anymore, right?
No. Analysts are not going away. Let me make that very clear. I do think they have to evolve.
I'm glad to hear that being one. That really fills me with some joy. Thank you. I'm glad you said that, John. I've only got 3 kids in college to pay for, so I'm glad I know I'm not going to be out of a job.
For a couple of years, Steve.
For at least, yeah.
Time will tell.
That's hard, and that's hard.
Sorry, Steven.
Yeah, kill me right away, guys. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning filming this. I don't need that.
No, analysts are not going away. I do think they have to evolve. The model has to evolve. And I think they're all, to varying degrees, trying or even struggling to figure that out. Makes sense. It's a hard challenge. But the explosion of generative AI has changed the world, has changed the game, has changed reality. There are multiple, we call them pools of trust, multiple pools of trust that the LLMs, the robots, if you will, synthesize and surface insights using them. So analysts, experts, practitioners, customers, we haven't touched on that yet, vendors, employees, partners, all those pools of trust, the robots read them, lean on them. They decide what's trustworthy, what's not, based on a variety of signals that we probably don't have time to discuss. And they surface answers for humans. They lean on human created content and synthesize it as robots to answer questions for humans. And so, yeah, it's very meta, very circular meta. But yeah, to your question, Nathan, yeah, it's changed. Analysts are no longer the sole or maybe even not the number one source of influence anymore. And, you could argue who's number one. Let's just focus on the set, because you need to be aware of your reputation, of what's being synthesized about you. And so, I don't want to turn into a commercial, but our concept of influence orchestration is the deliberate, strategic, and very methodical shaping and coordinating of influence across all those pools of trust that I mentioned that are synthesized into your visibility, your credibility, your discoverability.
John, I want to talk about influence as a word and what it means in our part of the world. I think, and I've seen people have violent allergic reactions to it as analysts. I don't share that, but I can understand it. I think we conflate the word influence and influencer with somebody selling makeup on TikTok. and a very B2C kind of modality and the negative connotations that come with that. So I've kind of developed this equation, which I think makes sense in the B2B space, and I want to bounce it off you and kind of get a reaction. For me, what vendors need is somebody with deep domain expertise in their thing, in their widget, and understanding of it. And then they need somebody with reach to be able to get that message to people. So having the best expert on a desert island might be interesting occasionally to go to a boat to that desert island to speak to that person, but it doesn't help you get the message out. And having somebody who's got huge, 1 million followers, but is a millimeter deep on what your value prop is probably not valuable either. So if those are the two extremes, so I've come up with this sort of equation of what you actually want is eminence, not influence. And what I mean by that is you want deep domain expertise and reach. And it's a combination of those two, one plus the other, that equals an eminence score. And what you actually is somebody eminent to be talking about you. So, and maybe just in the context of the acquisition and how you guys are thinking about it, does that make sense? Am I thinking about it in the right way? Or is it, hey, we just want people with reach and we want to just corral them to talking about us?
I got a few reactions. I would add to your equation customer understanding. Assuming that you write about or research a technology that customers, B2B, B2C, whatever, use, you must have understanding of what keeps them awake at night, their motivations, their pain points, their aspirations, whether that comes from inquiry or surveys or good old-fashioned gumshoe research. I think to be a valuable, rock star, eminent, influential, whatever word you want, analyst, you must have that. It keeps you fresh. It keeps you learning. I mean, one of my first lessons in understanding analysts 13 some years ago was the best analysts will tell you they're always learning. There are some who will say, I know it all and I don't need to know anymore.
Avoid those people.
We will not name names. Yeah.
But avoid those people like the plague.
The real rock stars will tell you, I'm always learning. And I've heard it over and over. I mean, hundreds of times. I, as an analyst, can never get enough customer perspective. And I think in some ways, it's become easier to get that because of the proliferation of information. In some ways, it's become harder to get it. So that's a challenge for us. So, Steven, to your equation, your recipe, I would add customer awareness, customer intelligence, if you will, to that. I will also say, if you're a vendor and that analyst who's on that tiny island has really great smarts that you value and you learn from, that's great. Go see that analyst on that tiny island. Don't only value analysts for their ability to influence, to amplify your message. If you learn something from them, do it. Talk to them. That's undervalued, broadly speaking. Now, let's be honest. Vendors want to earn influence via analyst relations. That's the way it is. That's the way it should be. That's fantastic. And so, yeah, you only have so many hours in the day. And so you want to choose people that your priorities, that they will help with your priorities, which may include that amplification, that eminence you mentioned.
I mean, I think for me, it's not to say there's not value in people with reach and there's not value with people on the desert island who are deep domain expertise. I think the perfect combo is somebody who's got both. And I'll go back to Ali Mellon. Ali's super deep on her domain and she's got a huge following on it. That's the perfect combo for me. You could argue me on mainframe in that community. I former product manager, I go as deep as it's possible to go, and I got a decent following on some of the platforms. I think if you can find that perfect combination for that one area, then you're off to the races.
Well, and to connect some of our conversations here, to Crystal's point, a decade ago, I think you needed that banner behind you of Forrester, Gartner, IDC, whoever, to help you become a rock star. Fast forward to today in the Substack, Medium, LinkedIn era, where you don't necessarily need that the way you used to.
Yeah.
I think about...
Does that actually go against you, John? Are we seeing it go the other way and having one of those banner heads holds you back and brings some... I'm not agreeing with what I'm saying, Nathan, but I'm asking the question.
I'll give you my reaction first. Yeah. You saw me immediately shake my head because I think there are people within those big banners who are absolute preeminent voices in their space.
100%.
So people are going to immediately go, what about Forrester? Forrester's not doing well. Forrester's on multiple consecutive quarters.
You're taking us down this path of talking.
No.
Go in there for anybody who's watching.
No. But I'm actually going to defend Forrester because, again, within Forrester, there are still experts employed by that firm who are the people you need to go talk to.
Brent Ellis on infrastructure, friend of mine, smartest guy in the room every time I'm in a room with him. Like, literally, that guy is like, I sit next to him in vendor briefing because I want to talk to him in the sort of breaks. We chat in the coffee breaks because he's way smarter than me and his level of influence, intelligence around infrastructure off the charts.
I want to hear John's opinion on this, but my reaction was more from the place of, and I've said this on LinkedIn in the context of Gartner, I am so tired of talking about the performance of companies overall because it abstracts away the value of individuals. And again, obviously you can't look at the two as mutually exclusive. But again, that's just where I'm at today on February 13th. So John, what's your reaction?
There are fantastic analysts at Forrester. There are fantastic analysts at Gartner. I mean, any firm has fantastic analysts. You're right. Forrester is very much taking it on the chin, in the gut, in the shins for a while now, and it's hard to watch. But there still are fantastic analysts, fantastic humans, fantastic research coming out of Forrester that unfortunately definitely is undervalued because of the shroud of things that are outside of the analyst control. So that goes back to the point about the island. If you still get great value from the CX, from the marketing, from the commerce, from the security analysts at Forrester, don't give up on them. Don't continue to engage them and learn from them. If your only priority is getting dots and ink and, what percentage of heavyweight Fortune 100 influencers these analysts talk to, well, that's going to change your priorities a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. Crystal, what were you going to say?
So I texted Nathan this morning because I was listening to a podcast and things started floating around in my brain. And I was thinking a lot about all the crazy talk about the downfall of this and that. I'm not going to go into that, but I think what we're seeing in that talk track is there's a lot of uncertainty around the dominant force in technology, which is software. It is changing. The pricing model is changing. The needs and requirements of end users, of business is changing. And therefore, there is an equal and opposite reaction that will have a domino effect across the board. And so that I think what we're seeing in that talk track, it's really easy to say, you are not going to make it because we're all feeling really insecure.
I mean, within 10 years of the Ford Model T being brought to market by Ford, the horse industrial complex was largely gone. How many people do you know now that are farriers?
Yeah, I know. You've made
how many car mechanics? And, there's not a farrier in my local town. He's one guy, my daughter horse rides. There's one guy that covers the Hudson Valley. He's remote. He drives around to stables. There would have been 3 farriers in my village. We're an adaptive species. 100 years ago, 50% of the population worked on farms. Now it's 3%. We adapt. And so, I mean,
we do adapt, Steven, but I'm going to cut you off and I'm going to get in there for a second because we've had this argument before. You've mentioned the Ford Model T, and I've met you with Xerox and Ricoh.
Yeah.
Xerox is not a printer company anymore. Yes, they still make printers, but they are a services giant. Like these companies evolve. IBM, like these companies evolve. And
IBM was almost out of business in the mid-90s. Now look at them; they've just had arguably their best quarter.
So I think what you're highlighting when you talk about adaptability and resilience, I think that's a check in the column for the Gartners, Forresters, IDCs of the world, because I trust that with this many incredible individuals, thought leaders, experts,
it's not a guarantee that it's not a. I mean, you'd have said that about Kodak.
Nothing is.
You'd have said that about Nokia. I mean, Nokia's adapted, BlackBerry's adapted, Kodak's adapted. You can adapt and still be in business, but Kodak is like a fraction of the size it was 30 years ago. Nokia is like a very different business than it was 20 years ago. So I think Gartner IDC, so I'll say this on the record because people think I'm crazy. Gartner IDC and Forrester will be around in 20 years' time. 100% guaranteed fact. Will they be the same size they are today? That's up for discussion.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and we're monopolizing conversation. I was just going to say, I think it's also, we are in such a transitional and transformative moment in time that I think the idea that individual thought leaders can go put up their own shingle and also have the same success that they have for an organization, that is also not guaranteed. So I think the one thing that is guaranteed is we don't know anything right now. We don't know anything.
I mean, going out on your own is really hard. I mean, we had Will Townsend on as the last episode. I wish Will every success, and I will cheerlead for him on all the platforms. But we've spoken about it. I'm like 15, 16 months ahead of him on that journey. It's really freaking hard. So, there's no guarantee of like, oh, I'll just throw my own shingle up and start writing and then vendors will give me money and I'll be able to pay the bills. It is not like that at all.
But
John,
your goals might also be different if you're out on your own. I can't help but think about Rob Koplowitz and John Reimer, who were legendary analysts, but they were legendary analysts at Forrester, retired. And then in a Clubhouse fun format, they started a podcast about low-code technology. And now it's emerged into analysis.tech, a legit boutique research firm. It's more than just the two of them, and they're having fun. I mean, they're having a blast. And, are they making as much money as they did in the past? I don't know, but I know they're having as much, probably way more fun than they did 10, 20 years ago. So sometimes your goals reset. You're fortunate to have your goals reset when you go out on your own, perhaps.
Maribel Lopez, Larry Carvaya, they are living their best lives, doing the work they want to do with the vendors they want to work with. Larry is kind of turning that dial to sort of retirement at some point, but turning it slowly and thoughtfully. You can hustle and build a firm like Will's going to do, no doubt at all. Will's going to be a rock star and he's going to hustle it and sort of make it. I have no doubt whatsoever about that. And then, so as you say, you don't have, but you also don't have to be a hustler. It can be a glide path into something different over a 5 to 10 year period.
Can I ask a really tactical question to Crystal and John? John, what you just said about John Reimer and co., that's fantastic. I actually don't know about analysis.tech. That's not my space. So not every analyst relations leader or program is fortunate enough to have the budget to subscribe to a platform like Architect or Oz. As practitioners, how do we find those hidden kind of valleys of expertise and benefit if you don't have access to those tools that are kind of helping do that collation for you? Obviously, word of mouth is huge, and if you're in an industry,
John, and you call Crystal and you ask him who's cool.
Yeah, but I don't know. What's your guys' advice?
You first, Crystal. Us dudes have talked way too much.
Gosh, it's really tough. I mean, I think you really need to focus on like, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And then it's gonna be some legwork and once you've identified your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, you're going to have to brute force some search and see what people are saying. Does it align? All of those things,
100% agree with what's your goal? What value are you looking for? I would add that in today's world, ask Gemini, ask ChatGPT.
Yes,
who are the
my LLM of choice these days.
Yeah. Who are the smartest people about blank? Who has compelling perspective on blank? So that's a fantastic way to start and kickstart, accelerate your journey to understanding the who's who has compelling ideas.
So just on that, John, and I think I agree with you, but if you went and asked, I don't know, let's pick my subject matter expertise mainframe. If you went and asked, and I'll go do this later just to check, but if you went and asked Gemini, who's the most kind of cited and respected analyst in mainframe, I know the answer is one of three people, or probably three. Me, Brent Ellis, and Alessandro Galimberti at Gartner. Because it's a tiny little space. There's only 3 or 4 of us that do what we do. I wonder whether the answer would be come back and be trusted. I don't know. And in a space where there's more analysts, I mean, the answer in you're going to find me, Alessandro, and Brent in mainframe pretty quickly.
There's your. We talk about Gartner being opaque, but there's the carrot as to why every firm should be a little bit more transparent to ensure
100%.
that you're finding the right experts with LLM based search. Is it accurate today? No. I tried it the other day because we had an in-vehicle router. We had an in-vehicle router launch, and there's not a ton of analysts that cover in-vehicle connectivity. Beatrice at 451. There's some others, right? I got 4 hallucinations like from my query, and it literally made up personas. So is it perfect today? No, but I say that's part of the call to action for analyst firms. You've got to make sure that you're opening yourself up enough for your
100%.
data to be trained, unless you truly want to be a closed ecosystem, which I think is a bad move.
I 100%. But I also want to say, Nathan, your question was, how do you start to explore? You should never have just one tactic. You should never have just one. I asked Gemini and got a list and that said, I'm done. No, you need to have a variety of research methods. Ask your colleagues, ask your peers at other companies. There's a variety of ways to build that list. So this speaks to the problem.
That question a lot.
Especially
Which other independent should I work with?
In the new technologies, right? Like, it's even harder because if you're doing something truly innovative, then guess what? There's not a lot of people covering you, period. Right. And if they are, they may be academic. I mean, it's really tough. And I think that's where sort of the part of AR that we don't talk about a lot is you as a company, how do you leverage the analyst to create a sphere of influence?
I do think there's a burden of responsibility. Look, I think when people talk about influencers and influence, if you have an analyst with a small island, John, there is no reason that as a vendor you can't help that island grow. Like the more reps you give to an analyst, the more exposure you give to an analyst. Like what is good for the goose is good for the gander.
That is part of our recipe, our strategy of this concept of influence orchestration is you as a vendor need to amplify the voices that you think are credible, authentic, accurate, compelling, innovative, all those things. That may mean linking to public content. They may mean licensing reports to reprint them and promote them. But yeah, you need to help amplify the thought leaders that you agree with and that you find compelling.
I think this is a good segue because we're at about 40 minutes right now.
I just
want to like 2 hours, right?
Simon, that's just
Are we going for the 3-hour podcast? Are we doing it?
I think this might be the episode when we go over an hour.
Are we doing it? I think we need to do an AR chat live at a bar. I said this last episode to Will, where we just talk. We just talk all day.
And
but the question,
little microphones that we pass around.
Yes.
Very influencer.
I've got those microphones.
You do.
So the question, John, is put on your wizard hat. Use the force, look into your crystal ball, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, whatever time frame you want to pick. What do you think people need to be paying attention to? How do you think this profession is going to change from an AR perspective, from an analyst perspective? This is your time. This is the end of the Hot Ones episode where you get to look into the camera and you get to talk and we won't interrupt you.
Well, pay attention to how the firms are evolving or not. Pay attention to how they are treating, how they're gating their content or not. Every firm has a choice to make and they're all, machinating on these choices. Do we build a moat and charge for access to cross the bridge? And you in the castle, you feel happy and content and it's only the Gartner data, it's only the IDC data, only the Force data, only the 451 data, whatever. Or do you lower that bridge and let your analysts out into the public to do more? Maybe you throw down the paywall entirely. Maybe you half and half. Everybody has a choice to make. And then there's another opportunity, another angle, like what IDC did, which is take your analysts, your insights, your intelligence to other communities. Go see other castles, if you will. So, every firm has a choice to make, and there's probably 3 or 4 other choices we haven't thought of yet, but pay really close attention to how they're evolving. Ask yourself, what do you care about? What do you value? Don't underestimate the value of simple learning from experts. That is unfortunately way underestimated.
Yes.
Don't ever underestimate that. These days with Substack and Medium and all that, somebody can achieve visibility easier, faster, whatever, than they could, 5-10 years ago. But Does that give them credibility? Does that give them authority? You have to assess all those things. And I mentioned it earlier, but don't put all your eggs in one basket of analysts. Look at customers. Look at your own thought leadership. If you're pumping out thought leadership that doesn't link to reference experts, customers, you're doing it wrong. You need to point to authority, trust signals in your own thought leadership. Don't get caught blindsided by what your employees are saying on Glassdoor, for example.
That's fascinating, actually.
What are your partners saying? I mean, there's influence is fragmented in so many ways now, and the robots, like it or not, are synthesizing and are creating answers. And so you need to be aware of what's being said, and you need to create an effort to guide it, shape it, coordinate it, orchestrate it.
There's
John,
an hour-long podcast in what John just said.
100%. I want to ask you one more question, because that was gold, like true gold. This is an AR podcast. We like to think it goes beyond that. If I'm an AR leader who is absolutely fascinated by the idea of influence orchestration, and I'm like, yes, like that is the future. Somebody has to centralize this process. That's not necessarily an AR's remit today. How do you go from point A to Z? Like, as an internal advocate, like, what should I be doing?
Well, AR has pedigree, has authority when it comes to research and understanding insights and surfacing them to the business. It should anyway. And the analyst firms are sort of forcing AR to stretch its wings. I mean, look at how much Gartner peer insights matters to MQs. If you're in an MQ and you don't have a strategy for GPI, what are you doing? It's going to hurt you. If you care about the Futurum signal and you don't have a strategy for understanding what's in G2 reviews about yourself, you're doing it wrong. And there's going to be more and more examples like that. The research firms need to find ways to gobble up more customer perspective. And I think that's a huge part of the decision-making evolution that every firm has to make. So I'm getting away from your question. First, I think the AR pros have the opportunity to stretch their wings beyond just traditional analysts and think about customers. And they've always been the keepers of references for MQs and waves and such. But customer reviews matter more than ever. But just like all of us that had certain talents back in the day, and then we evolved into AR pros or analysts, those foundational talents will help you in the future. And so relationships, ability to research, synthesis, those all things matter in droves, in spades for wherever AR is going in the future.
That's well said. Crystal, Steven, any?
Just wrap it up there on that mic drop and take us home, Nathan. There's nothing better going to be said than that.
I feel like we haven't let Crystal talk enough.
No, I know. I feel the same way. Crystal, come on. Anything to say before we leave today? That's what you're going to add.
Man, you know what, John? I really like the spheres of influence. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about as well. And it's interesting because it's so very human. In a world where the robots are telling us things and helping us say the things, the messiness of the spheres of influence is we're humans.
100%. That is well said. Humans are still king at the end of the day. Well, hey, you've been listening to another episode of AR Chat. It has been an absolute pleasure to be joined by John Rockhold from Spotlight Analyst Relations, or Spotlight Influence Orchestration, if that's on the cards.
Just Spotlight.
Catch us next time. All right. Bye-bye.